God punished Eli for not reprimanding his ill-behaved children who had no regard for God's word. And these chuckleheads are holding up ill-behaved children who are incapable of speaking respectfully to their elders as those whom we ought to follow.
Pistols, prayer, and potluck. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hi, folks. Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 172. Long-awaited episode 172. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week. We're back on track after a couple of weeks away. I want to thank all of you who reached out and expressed your condolences and offered your prayers and your thoughts for our family during a trying time following the death of my father-in-law. We spent a week in North Carolina, and we're there for the funeral and for some, trying to smooth things over with the family and get the things on track for settling the estate. Drove back, made a 16-hour trip, driving back to Texas, tag teaming between myself, my wife, and my son, and we made it in just a little over 16 hours. So back on track with full-strength Armed Lutheran Radio today. Thank you for your patience. Next Sunday is Father's Day, and want to wish all the fathers in the audience a happy Father's Day, including our own dads, Pastor John Bennett and Sergeant Bill Sylvia. So what is it that's so special about fathers? Well, if you ask anyone like my wife who lost their father recently, or really at any point, who have endured that loss, you'll find out exactly why fathers are so special. But given the views of fathers in society today, why are we still celebrating? Well, we'll talk about that in a moment. We'll talk more about how awesome fathers are. But first, let's talk about another group of really awesome people, you, our listeners, and particularly those of you who support the show through your purchases at the Armed Lutheran Shop or from our affiliate partners like Dunkin' Donuts or Gun Mag Warehouse, and of course, our beloved patrons who are members of the Reformation Gun Club. Armed Lutheran Radio is listener-funded radio, and that means no commercials, no financial commitments which might cloud or color our product reviews, and unfortunately, no money. And that's where you come in. By supporting the show in one of the aforementioned ways, you can make all of this possible. Be sure to check out the show notes for episode 172, where we have links where you can show your support for the show by shopping for your favorite items or joining the Reformation Gun Club at armedlutheran.us/gun club, where you can learn about all the benefits and exclusive content available for members there. Again, thank you all for your support. Okay, we're talking about Father's Day. Why is Father's Day a big deal? Father's Day dates back to the Middle Ages. Bet you didn't know that. It started out with the Feast of St. Joseph, who was the earthly father of Christ. And that feast day is still celebrated in the Catholic tradition in March, on March 19th. Father's Day didn't make its way into sort of a general observance outside the Catholic tradition until the 20th century, 500 years later. It's now turned into a civic celebration to complement Mother's Day. It started in 1908 in a Methodist church in West Virginia following a tragic mining accident which claimed the lives of 361 miners and left behind over 1,000 fatherless children. That event, though, never really grew beyond that congregation. Attempts were made to establish celebrations in other places, Chicago, Washington State, Oregon. A bill was even proposed to create a national holiday in 1913. President Woodrow Wilson spoke at a Father's Day celebration in Washington State in 1916 and offered his support for a national holiday, but Congress decided They weren't interested. They resisted because they thought that the day would become too commercialized. President Coolidge said the day should be observed throughout the nation in 1924, but he didn't go so far as to make a proclamation to establish a national holiday. And then at that point, the idea kind of lost steam. It wasn't until the 1930s when a woman named Sonora Smart Dodd, returning to Spokane, Washington from her studies in Chicago, began to make a push to promote the idea of a celebration of fatherhood. She got help from manufacturers of products that are traditionally geared towards men, neckties, tobacco, pipes, those sorts of things. And in 1938, she teamed up with a major menswear retailers association to promote the idea nationwide. But it wasn't for another 20 years, till 1957, that Maine Senator Margaret Chase Smith wrote a proposal to create Father's Day as an official national holiday. 9 years after that, President Lyndon Johnson issued a presidential proclamation which established the third Sunday in June as Father's Day. It was finally made official in 1972 when a law was signed by President Richard Nixon. Given today's grievance culture, this next little bit of info might be enough to get Father's Day revoked. Who was Sonora Smart Dodd, the woman who fought for the creation of Father's Day in the 1920s and 1930s? Well, she was the daughter of a Confederate veteran who had raised her and her 5 siblings on his own. So thanks to the efforts of people like Sonora Smart Dodd, the daughter of the Confederacy, we now have a day to celebrate fathers. But with all that in mind, I ask again, what's the big deal? What is the big deal about fathers? The 4th commandment is the one commandment that we have that comes with a promise. Honor your father and your mother, that your days will be long in the land that the Lord is giving you. Luther wrote that there's no greater authority on earth than the authority of father and mother. To paraphrase Luther, to the estate of fatherhood and motherhood, God has given the distinction above all lower estates that he commands us not only to love our parents, but also to honor them. In this way, he sets fathers and mothers apart and distinguishes them above all persons on earth. Proverbs 15 says that a fool despises his father's instruction. Proverbs 23 counsels children to listen to their fathers. But in America today, it's increasingly difficult for children to honor their fathers or to receive proper instruction from them. In the U.S., in 2018, over 81% of single-parent families are headed by a single mother. 50% of those women were never married. Almost 2/3 of minority children are born out of wedlock, and 1/4, 25% of all children in the U.S. grow up without a father. In the nearly 50 years since the official creation of Father's Day, the sexual revolution and radical feminism, the media, have told us that fathers don't matter. Families come in all shapes, they tell us. 2 mommies, 2 daddies, no daddy, rent a daddy, whatever. It's all the same. Children are resilient. So why does Father's Day matter? Consider some more of these sobering stats. 26% of the women who are the heads of single-parent households, 26% of those women were jobless for all of 2018. Didn't have a job at all. Despite making up less than 15% of the population, blacks account for 1/3 of all single-mother households. And while just 6% of married households are living in poverty, 39% of single-mother families are poor. Kids growing up in single-parent families are almost 3 times as likely to be arrested than kids in intact families. They're also more than twice as likely to have committed assault. Based on data from the U.S. Census Bureau, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the National Archive of Criminal Justice data, studies have found that the top 3 factors that correlate most strongly with gun homicide are growing up in a black community, not having a father present, and dropping out of high school. The black community part isn't the blackness itself. It's the lack of the father that's the key. Kids don't drop out of high school if they have a strong father figure, strong parental guidance to keep them on the right track. The black community just happens to be, like we said earlier, 30 some odd percent, nearly 40% of single mother households are in the black community. According to the National Fatherhood Initiative, nearly 2/3 of African American children are raised in homes without a biological father present. That's compared to 33% of all children in America. We've gone from father knows best to fathers don't matter in a span of 50 years. Just recently, we saw another record weekend of violence in Chicago, a city with very strong gun laws, high poverty rates for African Americans, and high rates of single-parent families. A significant percentage of the perpetrators of this nation's deadliest mass killings were raised in broken homes. Luther wrote that when father and mother can no longer exercise control, either because government has assumed the role of the parent, or because parents aren't present or they're not willing to exercise what he calls their natural dominion over them, the hangman must take over. Governments, he said, are custodians of the fourth commandment, as a cat is to mice. God, he wrote, has commanded you to control your children. But if the father's not in the home to control the child, what ends up happening? But we don't want to look at that. We don't want to think about that. We'd rather blame guns. We'd rather blame the NRA. Modern militant feminism tells us that fathers are unimportant. Masculine behavior is being beaten out of our boys, derided and mocked as toxic, with no father at home and a vast majority of public school teachers being female. So our boys are growing up with no male role models. A large percentage of our kids, of our boys, are raised almost exclusively by women. So there's no one to teach them the positive traits of masculinity: bravery, assertiveness, risk-taking, standing up for the weak, protecting women. I know this. This is the world that I grew up in. I'm the product of a single-parent family, a single-mother family. I know the damage that's done to a child when their world falls apart, when the father leaves and there's no one, not a man anyway, to guide them through their formative years. It affects a young man for most of his life. Trust me, I know. To this day, it affects me. I can't look back fondly on memories with my dad. I don't have words of wisdom passed down to me from my dad that I can lean on or learn from or pass on to my own children. This is what the sexual revolution has brought us. Instead of men and women working together in complementary roles that were given to us by God, men now routinely walk away from their obligations, and millions of women are left to raise their offspring alone, or, as society tells them, to abort their children because it would be better to kill them than to raise them in poverty or hardship. Children, lacking guidance from their father, turn to other father figures. Drugs, crime, gangs, ultimately, some of them depression, suicide, in some cases, mass murder. So what's the big deal about fathers? Why do we celebrate Father's Day? Fathers are the rock of the family, the provider, the protector, the defender, the teacher, the examples that children, young men especially, learn from and follow. And without their guidance and care, all we have to do, if we just open our eyes, is look, and we can see the results. Even if this corrupt world refuses to look, the results are all there for us to see for ourselves. Poverty, depression, death. Like our Heavenly Father, our earthly fathers, to use Luther's words, console, strengthen, confirm, nourish, and favor us. This is why Father's Day is more important than ever. As the role of fathers in America is diminished, the importance of fathers in the family are more important than ever. So to all the faithful fathers in our audience, from everyone here at Armed Lutheran Radio, I want to wish you a very happy Father's Day. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with tips from Sergeant Bill and from Mia to round out today's show. Thank you for listening. We'll be right back after this.
You can help support Armed Lutheran Radio just by listening to the show. Go to armedlutheran.us/radio and download the Radio Public app and start listening.
I want to take a minute here to thank our partner, the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you're involved in a situation where you have to use your firearm in self-defense, you very well may find yourself in a legal battle against overzealous prosecutors or the families of the criminal who you shot or threatened, who are looking to deprive you of your freedom or your hard-earned savings. You may find yourself charged with a crime or facing a civil lawsuit even if you did nothing wrong. That's where Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network comes in. For a small yearly fee, they will provide you with money for attorneys, money for bail, consultations, and access to experts like Marty Hayes and Masad Ayub. Don't face the fight alone. Visit Armed Citizens Network today. Use the promo code ArmedLutheran-25. Save $25 off your first year's membership, or you can grab the coupon on my website, armedlutheran.us. Sign up today. They will send you lots of cool resources, 8 instructional DVDs, and a book by Masad Ayub that I cannot recommend highly enough. Don't wait until you need their help. Be prepared. Sign up today. Visit armedcitizensnetwork.org.
Time now for Mia's Motivations with Mia Anstine.
Hey guys, guess what is coming? Father's Day. Father's Day is coming up on Sunday, June 16th, and I really used to just have a ton of fun looking for gifts for my dad. It was always it was a challenge, but it was really great to get things that my dad loved. And I hope that you all can get your fathers some great gifts as well, like I used to get to do. And so I wanted to share some of my ideas with you. Some of them are things that I got him that he really liked, and others are some that I know other dads that I've been around that they would like to have as well. So one of those is a barbecue grill. It seems like dads always love to grill, and barbecue grills are a great thing if your dad already has one, or maybe his is falling apart or has a burner out or something like that. You can look for a new grill. Another thing is a smoker. A smoker is something that not a lot of dads have, but it's something that they might enjoy. And the thing about grills and smokers is those bring the family together. And so it's kind of a gift for everyone, because when you're grilling in the summertime, there's usually more than just one person there. That is a lot of fun. And something that one of my friends did when they invited my family over to dinner is we actually grilled on the table with a device that's called a raclette. If you haven't heard of a raclette, it's spelled RACLETTE, and it's basically a tabletop stove. Some of them have a grill on one side, and you can flip the cast iron over, and then it has just a flat skillet type on there. So you can grill stuff on the top, but then underneath there are cast iron little pans that you can stick in there. So what you do is you prepare your meats ahead of time. You marinate them, maybe label the bowls or put a little sign by them so you know whether it's chicken or beef or whatever you're cooking. And then you also dice up your vegetables and you put those there. And then your guests, they can go and pick out what they want to cook. And so it's really fun because it's kind of like a Benihana, but in the middle of your kitchen. So that's a lot of fun. Something else with summertime is that you might want that raclette in the house because you have air conditioning, but summertime makes me think of hot. And when I think of hot and range days, I think of something that I used to use when I worked for Colorado Parks and Wildlife at the lake. Is I had a thing, it was a neck bandana, and it was called a chill wrap. And those things are really neat. There's also chill towels, but when you get them wet, they activate and it creates a cooling experience. So you can look for chill rags or chill bandanas or chill towels to take to the range and other activities. You can also look for maybe backpacks or range bags, a spotting scope if your dad doesn't have one yet. Those can get pricey as well. Something else is hearing protection, and we've talked about hearing protection on the show. We've also talked about eye protection on the show, but those are things that sometimes they get lost, and especially eye protection sometimes gets scratched, it wears out. Maybe look for some high-end eye protection that also block UV rays and things like that. That'd be pretty fun. For some of the dads that compete, they may need some new magazines. They may also like some tactical devices. If they're training in self-defense, they might want maybe a flashlight to attach to the rail or a laser. So you can keep those in mind. Those are things that you don't always think about. And one thing that I would like to suggest, my dad almost always just loved everything I got him. And it was partly because we spent time together and we visited when we were together. And I paid attention, and I paid attention to things that maybe he mentioned or things that I saw that he needed. If I was at his house and noticed something, then that's what I would get him. So that is my suggestion to you, is try to spend time with your dad this year. That's a wonderful Father's Day gift every day, is to spend time with your dad, and do that while you can, because as we know, we had a family member in the Armed Lutheran family is deceased now, and you just never know when it's time. So make sure every day is the best day, and always love each other. And I know that sounds cliche, but I've lost a lot of loved ones in my family, including my dad. And once they're gone, you don't get that back. And so I would like to wish all of you a happy Father's Day, whether you're the dad or whether you have the dad. Happy Father's Day. And I also like to express my condolences to the Bailey family, and I hope that you guys have a wonderful day as well. Have a great one. Till next time. Bye, guys.
You can read more from Mia, watch her YouTube videos, or check out her podcast, Mac Outdoors with Mia and Leah, at miaanstine.com.
Hey there, this is Sergeant Bill. After the successful completion of a match, Lloyd and I like to get together and top it off with a celebratory cigar. We get our post-match cigars from Cigar Page, home of America's best cigar deals. Visit armedlutheran.us/cigar and get a great deal. And also, help support Armed Lutheran Radio.
Time now for another Ballistic Minute with Sergeant Bill Sylvia.
Hey everybody, I'm Sergeant Bill. This is your Ballistic Minute. Today we're going to talk about transitions. So transitions are the part where you shoot from one target to the next, the actual movement between targets. Once you've gotten to a decent skill level, one of the biggest places where you can really gain some time and speed up your shooting is in transitions. Because you'll notice if you're ever at a match or you're at the range and you see somebody shooting one target and they move to the next, sometimes there's a pretty decent pause between the two targets. So what you're trying to do with your transitions is speed up the time between targets so you're shooting sooner. The technique to do it is you start out by moving your eyes to the next target and then have the gun follow. You don't want to do that tank turret deal where you're transitioning from one target to the next and your eyes and your head are following the gun to the next target. It's slow and it's not a very good technique. So once you've moved your eyes from one target to the next, you want to move the gun as quickly as possible from one target to the next. The way to do that is to push your hands and your gun away from the target you just finished shooting as hard as you can. About halfway there, stop pushing and just glide into the target. That way you can stop quickly and shoot sooner, and you don't stop hard and the gun and your hands kind of bounce around. It's easy to do this and see this technique when you do it on a wide transition. On a shorter transition, it's a little bit harder to do, but you want to try to glide into that next target so that you can shoot quickly, so you're on target faster. Now, you could practice this at various distances in dry fire, from close all the way up to 180 degrees. Start with close targets, put 2 targets close together on your wall, and practice transitioning, right to left, then left to right. You want to be equal in both directions. And then as you get more comfortable with it, move those targets further apart so your transitions get wider and wider and further. Then you can actually practice this in live fire. A lot of people do what's called a Blake drill. So they'll take 3 targets and they'll put them at a set distance, usually around 7 or 10 yards, and they'll put the targets about 2 to 3 yards apart. You could start out with them 1 yard apart or a couple feet. It doesn't really matter, but you want to try and start close so your transitions are very easy and doable. And then as you do the drill more and more, you can move the targets further apart. You can move your distance back. When shooting the Blake drill, the goal of it is not to see how fast your splits are, but to make your splits and your transitions the same. So if you're shooting a 0.5 split, you want your transition to be the same. And it's kind of just set up the cadence to push your transitions to try and get them faster without really worrying about how fast your splits are between shots. So you'll shoot 2, transition, shoot 2, and transition, shoot 2. Drill's over. And then do it again. Try to up your transition speed, try to up your split speed so that, it doesn't sound like bang, 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 bang. The goal of the Blake drill is to make them even and equal, so it'll go bang, 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 bang. A drill that I do to work on transitions that's not as ammo intensive, each run of that Blake drill is going to cost you 6 rounds. I do it with just 2 targets. A lot of times I do it with a piece of steel, so it's 2 rounds each time you're doing it. I'll set these 2 pieces of steel up at a distance, and then I'll go left to right, shoot steel to steel, and then I'll do several transitions that way, and then I'll stop and I'll go the opposite direction so that I get equal practice on both ways. When I'm shooting this transition drill, what I'm trying to do is I'm shoot the first shot, call your shot immediately, and then immediately move the gun. It shouldn't be settling back on your original target. It should be moving in recoil over to your other target. Sometimes steel targets, they're okay to use on transition practice, but you can always get that steel lag where you're waiting for the ding. Instead of visually calling your shot, you're waiting to hear that ding off the steel. And you'll see it because your gun will come back onto target out of recoil. You'll hear it and then you'll move over. So you have to be pretty conscious of not waiting for the ding on the steel and call your shot and move as soon as you called it. This definitely goes to the goal of transitions practice. The goal of your transition practice is to be fast and to shoot as soon as possible the next target. I think the best compliment I ever got on shooting transitions in a match that I had been working on was a fellow competitor came up to me and told me they weren't watching me shoot, but they knew there was a 3-target array, and they thought from hearing it that I shot 6 shots on 1 target, even though I transitioned between all of them. So they couldn't tell that there was a delay between each target. So work on your transitions in dry fire, work on them in live fire, and you'll pick up a lot of lost time. I'm Sergeant Bill. This has been your Ballistic Minute.
Sergeant Bill Sylvia is a veteran of the Dallas Police Force and a masterclass competitive shooter. You can check out his YouTube videos at armedlutheran.us/Sergeant Bill. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio.